All right, let's talk more about this. With me right now, Dave Jacobson, a CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist. John Thomas is also a CNN political commentator and Republican strategist. And also joining me, Sean Wu, a CNN legal analyst and former federal prosecutor. Good to see you all. All right, Shan, let me begin with you, Shan. You know, from what you have read and seen, does it appear that surveillance of Carter Page seemed warranted?
It does, but it is very heavily redacted, as is normal in these circumstances. Very few FISA warrants are really turned down, given how many are asked for. And really the reason for that is because so much detail goes into them. So it's obvious here from the length how much detail went into support the request. It's a little hard to understand how the president is able to discern that the detail that's missing doesn't actually support the request.
But regardless of what is redacted, what is there helps, in your view, support the merit of surveillance for him?
Oh, very much so. I mean, the accusation made by the FBI is so specific. They claim that they believe he is collaborating actively with the Russians. I mean, that's a very damning accusation, really.
So this morning, Senator Marco Rubio was on State of the Union, and here's what he had to say about the surveillance of Carter Page.
By the Trump's campaign own admission, Carter Page was not a big player in their campaign. I don't believe that, them looking into Carter Page means they were spying on the campaign. I also don't believe it proves anything about collusion or anything like that. I think Carter Page was one of these guys that we never would have heard of him before all of this, but he was a guy that was on their screen even before the campaign. And when he comes into kind of the near orbit of the campaign, they get interested when they put that together with what's happening with Russian interference.
So, Dave, will it take an indictment and perhaps even a trial of Carter Page, in your view, to find out the truth about whether he conspired, collaborated with the Russians in any way, shape, or form?
Potentially. I think it's a Bob Mueller question, right? But I was really struck by that juxtaposition where you've got Marco Rubio essentially defending the FBI's investigation or the FBI's request for the warrant to wiretap Carter Page. And then you have the president's tweet today, which is the precise opposite. I thought, while I agreed philosophically with him, I think Marco Rubio looked like a true patriot today. He was standing up to the president and telling truth to the people. That's precisely what they need. Let's not forget, by the way, Fred, it's important to point out that the entire FBI investigation into Russian interference in our election was started by George Papadopoulos. It was not struck by Carter Page, right? That was only the second tier of that overall investigation. So I think it's an important element to include in the conversation.
So, John, the judges who signed off on these 4 FISA applications were all appointed by Republican presidents. So are these complaints of, political partisanship really undermined by seeing how this process was played out and by whom it was executed?
Well, I think one thing we've learned in this era of Trump politics is that party politics does not necessarily dictate people's allegiances. I mean, let's look at James Comey, who was a Republican, is now urging every single person in America to vote Democrat. Just because Ana Navarro, who contributes to this network, is a Republican. I haven't seen her support any Republicans recently. So I don't think necessarily their partisanship dictates that. But I do think what's interesting about these documents is that how easy, quite frankly, it is to get surveillance on an American citizen. And yes, it was voluminous in what they wrote, but there were key facts that were left out. The Steele dossier, although they say
what do you mean that was
it
left out? You mean portions were redacted so the public cannot see?
Well,
but I mean, it takes quite a bit,
when
does
they were
it not, Shan, for even the judges to even consider these applications?
Right, you do need that detail, and again, it's very hard to discern what they did not put in there, but given the conclusions that the FBI made, it's really, I mean, the obvious assumption we can draw from that is that it was very damning detailed evidence.
Well, Fred, I didn't see in the documents, and maybe it was redacted, but I didn't see that they said explicitly that the Steele dossier was paid for by the Clinton campaign. Carter Page, just this morning on Jake's show, refuted
well, we know that was
the
already
accusation.
revealed. We know that information was revealed actually to the judges.
Okay. Carter Page also said that the documents claim that he met with two members related to the Kremlin that Carter Page swears he's never met with, he's never spoken with of any kind. So it just appeared that, look, Time will tell, but here's what I can tell you: that if it was a slam dunk case, that if Carter Page was in fact colluding with the Russians to collude with the Trump campaign, you would think at this point that Bob Mueller would be having Carter Page sharing a jail cell with Paul Manafort. But he remains a free man today, and it seems like that they surveilled him and found nothing.
Right, except that it had been already reported, though, that he had been on radar for a while because of so many interactions with a variety of players, not all of it being spelled out in these 400 pages, but that kind of raised the flag as to why investigators were even looking at him. So Shan, the release of these FISA warrants, it's never happened before. Is it worrisome to you that in any way it could impact applications this day forward?
It is an extraordinary release of information. I'm not sure it's ever been done before, and even though it's redacted, I think it does cause concern if the Justice Department is feeling so much pressure that they're having to release this. I mean, Trump declassified it. I don't know that will affect future warrant applications, except in this sense. The redactions right now still seem very protective of the sources, which is really important to do. Trump obviously has it within his power. If he feels that more detail would be helpful, he could order them to redact less. I think if you get to that point where sensitive sources are being revealed, that could pose a problem in the future for the applications.
And so, Dave, these documents, or at least the release of what we've all been, looking over, poring over, in any way, does it cast doubt on Congressman Devin Nunes' House Intel memo?
I think it does, right? I mean, the whole basis for that was the dossier, which was disingenuous and it was politically motivated. And I think what we found in the FISA documents was they actually explicitly say that some of the research that they had obtained was from a source that had a motive to discredit Donald Trump. They didn't explicitly say it was Steele or the dossier, but they said that the documentation obviously was provided from perhaps a political adversary of the president, right? And so I think that's an important note to point out. But bottom line, if you look at Carter Page's interview today, it just reeks of hypocrisy and disingenuousness. I mean, the fact of the matter is he went on television with Jake Tapper today and said that he was an advisor to the Kremlin, when in fact Time magazine reported on a letter that Carter Page put out back in 2013 where he explicitly, Fred, says that he was an advisor to the Kremlin. And so I think,
an informal advisor, in fact.
Informal.
Precisely. Precisely, but he used correct.
Fred, the challenge we have here is we shouldn't be needing to look at how the government obtains FISA warrants, but we have to. And we have to because people like Lisa Page and Peter Strzok and James Comey have ruined their credibility and shown that they have a bias against this president. And so now we have to unpack the entire process to make sure that it was done fairly and properly. And that's a shame.
All right. We'll leave it there. John Thomas, Dave Jacobson, Sean Wu. Thanks to all of you. Appreciate it.